this community garden here, where there's a bunch of fruit trees that are now in their fall colors, similar to those other wild and ornamental plants. So let's have a closer look how they look like, and then let's talk about them a little bit. So a variety of apple trees, pear and stone fruits are grown here, and how they look like now in November. Obviously most of these fruit crops here, such as this apple, are actually planted just to fill in the garden. They are, most of the time, they're not commercial cultivars, and their purpose is not to produce fruits except for wildlife, for animals in this particular area. So the purpose is not for human consumption, but of course it can be, you know, they can be productive, and they can be also used for human consumption in the neighborhood or in the gardens here. People may be able to consume them. That's not an issue. The point is to utilize this huge area that is here now to plant certain fruit species that are good for the environment, good for the people, and good for the wildlife as well. Then I have a closer look at what's left of these plants. As you know, plants during the fall or autumn, the leaves change color because the plants try to absorb all the nutrients that they can from these leaves, store them in the stem and also in the root, and that's why they change colors. And what's left is some of the pigments, anthocyanin, carotenoids and xanthophyll and others that are not being absorbed. So the leaf in those would fall, and then all the nutrients would have been stored in the trunk and also in the root zone. That way they can be used again in the spring to produce new flowers, especially in plants that prioritize bloom over vegetative growth, over leafing. So they produce flowers before they produce leaves. Where do they get the nutrients from? They get it from here, from the fall, from storing all the nutrients it has in the trunks and also in the root system. Of course, different varieties would have different response to the environment, and so that's why they are at different stage of what is called dormancy. So what is dormancy? Dormancy is basically going to be dormant or asleep. It's equivalent to hibernation in animals. This is in response to stressful environment such as the winter. When it is freezing cold, these plants would go dormant. And so for them to go dormant, they don't want to risk losing all the nutrients they accumulated throughout the summer. So what they do, they store their nutrients, as I said, in the trunk and the roots before they go dormant, before they lose all the leaves, such as this tree here already lost all the leaves, and so this is already dormant. Dormancy is invisible physiological process that keeps the trees resilient, strong in face of freezing temperature that is below the 0 degrees. And so these trees are not affected by freezing temperatures because they are dormant. The part that is very susceptible to freezing is the leaf, because the fruits would have been harvested and those leaves have been dropped. So this plant will stay healthy, nothing on it except what you see here, the stems and obviously the root. So this is, although it looks dead, it's actually full of life and full of activity. So why not all plants go dormant in the winter here? Why some of them stay green? Well, there are different reasons for that. Some of these plants originate not from temperate regions where there is freezing temperature, but also in tropical and subtropical regions. And so they don't need, they are genetically not adapted to go into dormancy. And so some of them are subtropical especially, can withstand below zero temperature or is like for a shorter period of time. But if they are exposed to a longer period of time, such as these ones here, they would have been dead. They will die. So even though they remain green throughout the winter, such as olive, for example. Olive can withstand cold temperature for an extended period of time, not as resilient as these apples and pears, stone fruits, but they can withstand for a shorter period of time. Longer period of times, of course, will render them dead. So that's what's happened. These are subtropical and tropical. Most of the tropical plants like banana, mango will not withstand also longer period of temperature below zero, especially if it goes below 10. These will die. So that's the minimum temperature for them, and that's why you don't see a lot of bananas and mangoes, papayas or avocado grown here, because these simply cannot tolerate low temperature whatsoever. So here is an oak tree that is, as you know already, going through dormancy. They have changed the leaf colors. The chlorophyll is gone, the green matter in the leaves. The chlorophyll is already absorbed because the minerals are actually mobile, like nitrogen, magnesium, that makes up the chlorophyll are mobile elements, so it's easily absorbed to the trunks and the roots. What's left is immobile elements constitute these pigments, and these pigments serve also several purposes, including the protection of the plant against diseases. As you can see here, some of these leaves already infected with fungal diseases. So this serves as protection. They can tolerate a little bit of harsh sunlight before we are going to the winter. So that's one deciduous oak tree. As I mentioned, this is an evergreen oak, which is native to the subtropics, lower Mediterranean region, and so this is able to tolerate slightly longer, like winters, not super long, deep freezing winter, but the one like you usually face here in Reading, lower United Kingdom, which doesn't get really snow for most of the year. Only occasionally it snows just a little bit, but not much. So this can tolerate that kind of weather. But you can see the size difference in the leaves for those plants that cannot tolerate lower temperature, freezing temperatures, such as this field oak or English oak and this evergreen oak. The same story goes for these kind of plants. They can withstand very low temperature, and I'll tell you why. If you look closely, these leaves are needle-like. These are called conifers. So this is how the leaf look like for this conifer pine tree. Conifers are actually not the same as these oaks. These belong to two different groups of plants. Conifer belongs to a group called gymnosperms. They don't produce flowers. You never see flowers. You see cones that carry the seeds inside. So if you open the cone, you'll be able to see inside of it the seed. Whereas these oak trees carry seeds. As you know, they are acorns. They're fruits of the oak, and they produce, of course, fruits. So these trees are called flowering plants, agiosperms, and the other ones, conifers, are non-flowering plants. Okay, here it is, non-flowering plants. They never produce flowers. So not all the plants produce flowers. Some of them will, others will not. because there are two different groups of plants. One is called gymnosperms, non-flowering seed plants, whereas the other plants are all including this huge salix or willow tree. All of these are flowering plants, and they are called scientifically agiosperms. These are able to withstand winter because they are adapted to this environment. Conifers have needle leaves, you can see here, slow growing needle leaves. So as you saw the difference between evergreen oak and English oak, which has a wide leaf, evergreen is small leaf, this is even needle shaped leaves. This can withstand very low temperature. Most conifers, whatever their species is, have this needle-like leaf, so they are able to withstand very low temperature. They don't need to lose their leaves simply because they are very slow growing so they will not be able to grow in the following season on time before the second winter, and so they maintain their leaves, but they have very thick cuticle, needle-like, so they can withstand very low temperatures. Here is another conifer species different from the one we just saw, and you can see here this has shorter leaves relative to that one, the one I just showed you now. So this is another species of conifers that will also be always green, and this has cones or fruits different than the one we just saw. This is again the same seeds. Here inside you can see the seeds covered with this red aril. Here at the University of Reading campus, this is an evergreen conifer, but if you step outside just next to it is another conifer that is not an evergreen. That is this one, swamp cypress. Despite the fact that most of these conifers are actually evergreen, there are a few, two of them here known in the UK, swamp cypress and also down redwood, that are deciduous, and they shed their leaves, as you can see here in this swamp cypress, in the fall. So as I told you before, trees go through dormancy because they store their nutrients in the leaves and the trunks and the roots. They need them in the spring because they flower. Exactly, that's why these will go dormant and this will not, because conifers don't flower, so they don't need to do this whole thing. They might as well save their nutrients in their leaves, continue to do the photosynthesis throughout the winter season whenever it is suitable for them to do so in terms of temperature, and then keep on growing. This is not the case for the flowering trees, and that's the main difference between trees that go dormant and trees that don't go dormant. One of them, remember again, this is the last thing I would say in summary, these are two different groups of plants. One is called flowering plants, these are agiosperms. The other one are non-flowering plants like conifers, these are called gymnosperms. Second thing, these have needle-like resilient leaves, or they are originally from tropics or subtropics, so they don't go dormant. Genetically they don't go dormant. The flowering temperate trees and shrubs and plants, they do go dormant. They do go dormant because they need to store their nutrients. Otherwise, they will lose the leaves because of freezing temperature, and they will not be able to utilize that nutrient that is lost in the spring to produce new leaves and new flowers. So that's the second reason why. And of course, this is the main reason why plants go dormant, because they want to grow next spring, produce new flowers, new leaves, because they are angiosperms. The other trees don't have to, because they are gymnosperms. Well, I hope you enjoy this video. If you did enjoy the video, please share it with others.